Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier and this is the Piracy Show. Now, on today's show, we are going to basically, once again address questions and comments from the previous ship updates video. But we are also going to add in a little bit of a surprise right up front. Ben Lesnick did a Q&A on Saturday, a surprise Q&A on Spectrum. A bunch of stuff was revealed, so we're going to kind of go over that. So there's a little bit of a ship updates element to this. So some good stuff. Let's get started with that. We'll quickly kind of punch through that, get the bullet points, the important stuff, and then we are going to move on to the comments and questions from the previous ship updates. So without further ado, let's get started. Actually, before I get started, I just want to say thank you to Bullet with Batwings, who posted basically the notes from this on Reddit. Because if he hadn't have done it, then I wouldn't have seen it because I wasn't there when Ben Lesnick hopped on Spectrum. Anyways, here we go. Alright, first, the Carrack is hopefully starting a little later this year. Now, of course, the Carrack was, I believe, slated to start after the Caterpillar was completed, but, you know, things change. Unfortunately for the Carrack owners, that ship has been delayed. There is no chance of it sneaking into 3.0, but, you know, I think that that's kind of a given, because even if 3.0 took until the end of the year, not to trigger anybody, but I mean, it's not beyond the realm of possibility, realistically. The Carrack would still, I mean, given the progress that's been made on a lot of the large ships and whatnot, and how long it's taken. I mean, if you remember the Caterpillar, they first started blocking out the interior of the Caterpillar around September 2015, and we got it just before Christmas 2016. So Carrack, obviously a larger ship, a much more complicated ship, so chances of that getting done before 3.0 it's completely, it's never going to happen. Also, as a quick note, I do recognize the fact that occasionally I say Cutlass when I mean Caterpillar and Caterpillar when I mean Cutlass. I'm working on it. Alright, ship prices for 3.0. They haven't made a final call yet, but if any change, it's just because the ship's status changed. So one of the things that I've said before is to watch out for is the Cutlass. Of course, the Cutlass Black having been upgraded in size, possibly upgraded in armaments, and the Cutlass Blue and the Cutlass Red to go along with that. I would definitely, at this point, I would, if you're planning on getting a Cutlass of any type, now would be the time to pick that ship up. Pick that ship up, because chances are, I would say very high, that the Cutlass is going to get a significant price bump when it moves on to the new fully redesigned version. So he is unwilling to tell anybody what are any of the ships that might be becoming flyable. I think one of the obvious standouts, of course, the Buccaneer, and also the Dragonfly are two ones that I would say easily are going to be flyable in 3.0, or at least rideable on a planet surface. I don't know why the Dragonfly isn't in the game yet. I mean, we've been seeing it for months, so that's kind of a mystery, but whatever. There will be at least one new concept piece with the Merchantman in it this month. Now, there have been rumors that the next concept ship is going to be Banu based, or it's going to be another Banu ship, and I don't know, possibly like a salvage ship, a small salvage ship is something that stands out, something that hopefully, because if you want to salvage, pretty much the Reclaimer is the only game in town. I mean, you can kind of convert and do other things with other ships. Certainly the Caterpillar might be an ideal platform for that, but once again, that would involve a lot of modules that would take time to design, and then that wouldn't be sort of like a bespoke solution for salvaging. It would be kind of just like adapting another ship to do it. So there have been rumors of a small salvage ship, and originally it was looking like when the Terrapin came out that was going to be the small salvage ship, but who knows now. But yeah, there have been rumors that the next ship is going to be Banu, and I think they were saying recently that a whole bunch of the next ship concepts are going to be profession-specific ships, and my thinking is there'll probably be smaller varieties of profession-specific ships, so that players who are in those professions can get a ship that deals with their profession very soon as the PU expands, possibly much sooner than if, let's say, you had to wait for an Endeavor or a Genesis Starliner to get finished, which, I mean, at this point, those aren't even on the radar yet, so... And yeah, I feel for the owners of those ships. I don't even think CIG remembers the Genesis Starliner exists. Alright, design is working on turrets. Chris actually asked for a special focus on that after the Hurricane came out. I feel that myself and other people commenting quite prominently on turret functionality, and you know, there were a lot of people on the forums who were like, I don't know on a turret-based ship because turrets work like shit right now. I think that kind of, you know, that was kind of one of the things that kind of lit a fire under getting turrets fixed, is all the people when, you know, the Hurricane came out and there was a lot of people on the forums and in chat saying, I don't know, man, turrets are shit. Like a lot of people in the comments of my videos going, well, I'd consider it if turrets weren't so shitty. And yeah, I don't think that the Hurricane maybe did so well for them, and they were probably expecting a lot more, and I think turrets and their functionality were a huge factor. But I mean, that in and of itself is a huge win for everyone. It's a huge win for me. It's a huge win for probably most of you, because whether you have a Redeemer, a Caterpillar, a Cutlass, whatever, you've got turrets all over your ship, and like this has been an ongoing problem. It's just they're almost useless on a ship, if not completely useless. So to see that actually kind of being moved to the forefront and getting addressed, fantastic. That's good news as far as I'm concerned. Okay, an Aurora update is in progress now. We know that. Vanduul ships for Squadron will be in the PU. Can't share more on that yet. So the ships that you play against in Squadron 42 will be in the persistent universe. And I'm really wondering if there isn't going to be a market for stolen Vanduul ships in the PU. I mean, that I think could be a heck of a business opportunity. Let's see. Game design always looks perfect on paper a year before it matters, but then you finally implement your ideas and you find out what you didn't know. No comment. Alright, I do think the Hurricane is going to be stupid fun. No modules to announce yet. No comment. Alright, question. Why do we hear in space? Shouldn't there be silence because there is no air? Well, okay, just let that go. Rule of cool on that one. I assume your ship's computer is simulating the sounds. Saying the ship's computer is simulating the sounds to help your situational awareness, that's not a terrible idea. And so, as far as the implementation of the rule of cool, I'm not overly distressed about that, because I mean, technically it is a situational awareness bump, so having your ship's computer simulate the sound, or having like a little computer in your suit simulate the sounds when you're EVAing, not the worst idea. Okay, this seems to be going back to turrets. It's a bigger thing than making more turrets. We need to figure out how to make them functional for the turreted player first. So looking at stabilization, feedback, etc. Realistically, that really shouldn't take that long. I mean, you look at, I was recently watching somebody who was playing on, I don't want to say a pirated server, but kind of like a rehash server of Battlefield 2142. And I mean, going way back in games, we've had turret gameplay and auto-stabilizing turrets and all that, so I don't see how this is going to be a very like difficult thing to surmount, considering that, you know, rewarding and fun turret gameplay on a vehicle that moves with 6 degrees of freedom and, you know, zips around at high speed or at low speed. I don't see how this is going to be a major hurdle for them to cross. I think it's more a question of actually just kind of sitting down and just belting out the work, rather than just saying, okay, well, it's basically functional, it's in game, let's move on. I think that this is, I don't think it's going to take them that long, realistically, to get turrets up and running properly. All right, they're changing the process for merchandise to reduce the pre-order time, but it has meant less merch in the store time while we stock up. Expect to see a few items soon. Whatever. All right, I do not know what the ETA for docking tech is. Docking tech is not being ditched. It's necessary for many important things beyond the Merlin. So no ETA on that, which is weird, because I thought at one point they were actively working on it, but I guess that's been set aside for now. So I guess if you own a Merlin, you're going to be orbiting Crusader for a while yet. Sorry. All right, question. What's the most exciting thing you're waiting for that you can tell us? Answer. I know it's pretty basic, but planets and first careers, which are in the next patches, plural, are going to be huge. The game will make a lot more sense to folks. Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of a given that once we start getting careers and once we can start exploring things, that, you know, that of course is, you know, it's huge. It's what a lot of people are waiting for. That's kind of why I made that video saying like 3.0 is possibly going to destroy my life, because I'll actually have something to do in the PU rather than just flipping a few stations and doing the PI mission to grab some quick alpha UEC, which in the end gets erased anyway, so I don't know why I do it. I do not believe there's been any talk of a rear turret on the Constellation. Terrapin will be flight ready later this year. We'll bring it back then. So I guess there's a question. That was a question, like, when's the Terrapin going to go on sale again? He cannot give an estimate on 3.0. There's no plan to change the snub dock. Plan is to get it. Okay, so once again, this is the snub fighter docking in the Connie. They're not changing it. The plan is still to get it up and running, just no ETA. Why is there not a starter pack with tier 2 starter ships in them? A good question. Packages are going to get a refresh. That'll include that. Well, okay. All right. We've got 262 in the works right now. After that, we'd have to see. I'd say it'd depend on when things come online. If we get something awesome ready to go before all the 3.0 features are locked, we could do an interim patch, or not if it all happens at the same time. I think that's kind of a given. 600, which is a reference to the Origin 600, which was accidentally revealed last summer, and we haven't heard anything about it. Ben says, never heard of it. That's more of just like an evasive answer to say, like, oh, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Will we be getting cruise speed back so we can go into cruise and get out of a pilot chair and walk around the ship? Not sure on cruise speed. That'll be up to the balance guys. So yeah, that was something that was changed, but technically you can still do that. If you punch your ship up to cruise and then just get out of the pilot seat, your ship will still keep going in a straight line at the speed that you're going, and you can wander around. When I was trying to capture some footage with my Caterpillar, I punched it up to maximum speed, and I was walking around the front of the ship, and I was trying to get some footage where I was basically looking out the front of the cargo bays while I was flying forward through the asteroid field around Yella. And what actually happened is I walked too far forward, and it actually dropped me out of my ship, and then my ship just bounced me off and then just kept flying away without me. So that's still a thing. Like, you can actually still do that in the game now. Super Saber. Never heard of it. So I didn't realize they were going to make a super version of the Saber. But if they're willing to take suggestions, I have a few on how you can make the ordinary Saber a lot more super. But, yeah. Chances of that, probably not. The next concept ship is going to be the ... I want to say so badly, but it's not the 600. Concept sales don't block 3.0 at all. Of course not. I think that letting what someone else thinks of you change what you want to do is never a great plan. Kind of, that's sometimes a good philosophy, and at other times that can be a kind of a bad philosophy. I mean, you've always got to be willing to take feedback, so I don't know. Chris likes aggressive schedules because they motivate the team, but they don't always work out. They can always, spiff up the backers too, if you say 3.0 in 2016, and then no. But, no. We do spend money on marketing, things like brochures for the concepts. Or whatever. Chris has all the old DAT tapes. That's Wing Commander stuff. Wing Commander. He's got an Amiga 4000, an old Power Mac, an FM Towns, a PC98, a 386, and 2 early Pentiums. I think I still have an early Pentium floating around here somewhere. A Pentium 90, if I remember correctly. Let's see. I would be so happy if EA were doing Wing Commander, but they have Star Wars, so it'll never happen. Yeah. Alright, more Wing Commander freelancer stuff, blah, blah, blah. End of March is most likely for the next concept, so concept sale end of March. Yes, support ships. Our next chunk of concepts that are being kicked off now are more support career focused. Oh, so yeah, that's where I got this from. When I was saying it earlier in the video, this is, yeah, unconsciously I must have just recorded this when I was reading it and then just using that to kind of fill in the blanks further up. I'm told that the UEE authorities categorically deny the existence of any so-called Project Eclipse. One of the ships that was accidentally revealed by Foundry 42 in the UK back in last summer, I think August-ish, during an ATV episode. They were all up on the bulletin board. Not pictures of them, but just a write-up saying do this, do that, and do the other thing. People are kind of thinking it's going to be like another stealth fighter or a stealth ship, but there have been no details beyond that. Do you know if the Xeon are working on some Cartool Scout updates? No. Let's see. Nothing to share on the Scouts. Sorry. When is the Great Cat getting some love? I love the Great Cat right now. And I am eagerly awaiting, looking forward to loosing them on some moon surfaces. What ship to be flight ready, hangar ready are you most looking forward to seeing? Answer: the Endeavor. Comment: don't hold your breath. Let's see. I guess this is a reference to the Big Benny's machines. The noodles are not me. Benny is one of the writer's pugs. And then that's the end of it. So he tells everyone to have a happy Saturday. So yeah, career-focused concept ships are going to be next. There should be another concept sale by the end of March. Those are two big takeaways. Ben is looking forward to the Endeavor. So I don't know, Endeavor owners, maybe if you put some pressure on him in the forums, and maybe he can get that bumped up in the schedule. But then once again, that is all dependent on overall community interest and having the resources free to build a ship like that, and that is still a very big ship. So they'll probably push that one aside just because they can get a lot more done at the same time doing multiple ships than just putting everything into that one ship. So, you know, some interesting information and some good takeaways from that. All right, now let's get to the comments from last week's ship updates. First, the Canadian Will. Well, I'd sure like to know if my blue will still have the better armor, additional missiles, and shields. It's kind of why I got it, because it's a police interceptor. It sounds like the black will now have better gear and than the more expensive model, i.e. weapons racks and gear lockers. I think that what they're going to do is they're kind of holding off on firm details. I think Matt Sherman was saying that. They're holding off on firm details on the Cutlass Black until they fully finish the refactor. That's another ship that hopefully will be flight ready in the near future. But yeah, I think they're going to hold off on giving details, but I still think that when they do bring out the blue, it's going to be a notch higher up in terms of weaponry than the black is going to be. I think they're going to keep with that whole, you know, that whole process of thinking. Because if I remember correctly, the Cutlass Black, or the Cutlass Blue was $165 when it first came out, versus the Cutlass, which was 100 originally, 110 I think, with a game package. Yeah, so I would expect, I mean, I would, at that point, I would demand that, obviously, that the Cutlass Blue gets a certain amount of advantage over the Cutlass Black. I think that's a given. All right, Gabriel Reg, no missile racks, no gun rack, no cargo, little to no armor. Buccaneer basically just became a glorified Dragonfly. Can someone please explain to CIG that design is not the same as making cool looking stuff and then fitting it with usable components? Dude, preaching to the choir. Without going off on a whole other tangent about weapon placement, which, I mean, at some point I think I'm going to have to make a definitive video about to explain. Yeah, that has been kind of a reoccurring theme and a reoccurring problem at CIG, and I think that, you know, when you're used to making single player games, or largely like non-PvP single player games, there's kind of this, you know, you can kind of do what you want and you can just balance things very simply. But in a universe where you're going to have PvP, and certainly in a universe where you want to have like a lot of diverse fighters and a lot of diverse designs, I mean, you want to see people out using Gladiuses, and you want to see people out using Buccaneers and Hurricanes and all this stuff. But then you put a ship like the Hornet in the game. It's going to make people default, not because of laziness, but simply because there's one thing that's designed better than everything else, and people are just going to default to that. And it's just going to be like, well, why not use the Hornet? If you're in the game and you're fighting for your life, and you realize that you lost a fight just because of, you know, let's say, like so many times in so many games or boss fights or whatever, when it comes right down to the wire, when it comes right down to just one hit point on either side could decide things. And when you really think about like your entire gaming history and how many times that has happened, and how many times you lost by just a hair, by just a fraction of a second, by just a little tiny bit, and you were so close and you lost. In a PvE game, you can easily balance those things around, but in where there's PvP, like so many of these little things in ship design, like when I'm talking about weapon placement, it seems like it's not that important, but it can be critically important, and that in and of itself can really kind of change the nature of an engagement, and it can save a player a lot of time, a lot of pain, a lot of having to go back to a station, get a new ship, wait for insurance, blah 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 blah, do all this stuff, and possibly losing UEC and all kinds of like things that can knock that player back. I think that perhaps a little too much time spent designing single player games and not enough time designing multiplayer games has kind of left CIG a little bit blind to some of these things. And so I think that when we get to the point in the beta where stuff actually counts, where we start keeping track, like let's say right now you're in 261, 262, and you're flying around, you're picking up guns in space and picking up money. The next patch comes out, all that shit gets erased. It doesn't matter. You lose your ship, you go back to the station, you get another one, you just go out and you just keep doing shit. And none of it counts, none of it matters. But when it counts and when it starts to matter, you're going to see a lot of these issues start to come to the forefront. And that's kind of why I'm arguing so hard for these things right now. And then people are like, it's not important, it's not important, don't worry about it, they'll just balance it later. No, because later is going to be too fucking late, because at that point you're going to have to change a lot of ships. Otherwise you're just going to end up in the Star Citizen universe, which is Hornet to Redeemer to Constellation to whatever else. And all the other ships, people are just going to be like, yeah, they're interesting and they're niche, but really in the end, just get a Hornet and you can do everything with it. And so, yeah, it's going to be, I think it's a lesson that can only really be learned if you have that kind of like pre-knowledge of, having played so many multiplayer games and understanding that people will default go to certain classes that just have the utility and have all these added features. And some of the niche classes, though they will be certainly cool, people will default to the easiest path, not by a fault, but by just simplicity, for simplicity's sake and for efficiency's sake. People will default to the easiest path to get the things that they want. And a lot of these fighters are going to fall by the wayside in the end because, that no one really took the time to actually think that far ahead. And that's why I argue. All right, 9999 Plato. If they would have made the Buccaneer land on dual skids, dude, I submitted that in the very beginning. That could have come out of the bottom of the engine nacelles with the front landing gear gone. They could have put the S4 gun on the bottom and mounted the weapon pods on top of the wing, or vice versa. I think that since Chris Roberts already got his money from selling these concept ships, he no longer needs to show them some love. Also, gimbaled S2 should have been mounted in the engine nacelle and made fixed. They would have been better protected. Then you would have an S4 belly and two S3 fixed, with two S1s on the wing. As maneuverable as this ship is supposed to be, it won't need gimbals. Sadly, this is probably a Chris Roberts gimp job. He probably didn't want the ship to be powerful, or it might change his sense of balance. The longer I stay in this game, the less I am impressed in management. So I think that once again, I think it's kind of going back into the previous point. I don't really think that it's a deliberate, malicious attempt to kind of make certain ships terrible and make other ships great. I think that the problem is it's a lack of awareness as to how the placement of things, how important they can be in the end, right? And so I think it's just, I don't want to use the word ignorance, but I think it's just a lack of understanding that is kind of creating this situation in the game. And yeah, I think it's a lesson that unfortunately is going to be that is going to have to be learned the hard way for CIG. That's honestly, that's pretty much it. All right, the Freak. I was one of those people who melted their buckets when I found out there was no gun rack. It was one of the key ideas that separated from other ships in that price range. The gun rack made it the single seat fighter for any FPS-centric player. Oh well. Yeah, the gun rack, amongst all these other things, was kind of what made the Buccaneer the Buccaneer. It's why the Buccaneer is this is why it is. It's why it exists. It's because it's kind of filling that niche slot that the original Cutlass did not fill as it was supposed to. And so the Buccaneer is supposed to fill that slot. Now, of course, they've changed the Cutlass, so I guess they feel that they now have the freedom to remove all these things from the Buccaneer, and it's not going to be that big a deal because they say, oh well, you can just get a Cutlass. But the problem is you come back to, why the hell did we have to build a Buccaneer in the first place? And we're now doing this again. And it's really, do we want to go down the whole road of like toxic forum threads and toxic dinks, in quotes there, and all that? Do we really want to go through all that stuff again? Really? Do we need that? I guess some people enjoyed it. All right, next comment from Noxious Butt Spray. Great name. Scam Citizen. Okay. I don't think, I think that, where Scam Citizen comes from, is a kind of like this confrontational attitude that certainly certain people in the community have with CIG because, I think realistically it's CIG's own making. The internet is the internet. You can't fight the tide. And I think CIG, in the way they handle certain things, like, they talk about, like, what's the next concept show? We're not gonna tell you. You can't know yet. It's one thing to say, oh, we don't want to reveal our production schedule because, we don't want to set false hopes or false expectations. Subtext. But like the thing of it is when they do all these things, like, we're not going to tell you what the next concept ship is yet, or we're not going to do this, or we're not going to do that, or we don't want to spoil the surprise. It's like, okay, so you're not going to show me any more of the Idris because that spoils the ending of Squadron 42. It's like, I saw the Idris, I know how the game ends. It just doesn't wash, and it's always like holding things back, and then it always seems like once we get to a critical mass with the community where people are getting pissed off, and it's like, here's all these new screenshots. And it's just like, if you just let that stuff go, if you just let that stuff out as it came out, I think overall, the community wouldn't go through all these peaks and troughs, and certainly you wouldn't get to this point where people are getting angry and saying things like Scam Citizen and shit like that. All right, Jason Giles. Not sure if I'm liking the outside of the Cutlass now. It needed a rework, but it looks smaller. The inside is much better, but I actually like the look of the old one. I do like the look of the old one as well. I hope they do rehash that. I think I've said that before, and use it for a different ship or a different fighter. CIG, if you want, I've got some ideas. But the whole thing about it looking smaller from the outside, I understand how you came to that conclusion, because I felt the same way too when I first saw it. It looks smaller, but it's deceptive because we have nothing to scale it against, nothing around it, and it's actually it's a much larger ship, but it's because that nose has been kind of like pushed inwards on the ship, and it's the configuration of it has changed, that it looks it's basically, the art is deceptive without things to see around it to kind of give it some scale, but it is a much larger version of the Cutlass. But yeah, I agree that with the old Cutlass, I hope they reuse it as a different ship. I have some ideas, CIG, just saying. All right, Uniphobia. I'm still flying on a damn Aurora. Poor guy problem, so stressful. There's something to be said for having the complete game experience in front of you, and to be able to kind of move through things. And certainly there's going to be a lot of people putting out guides, the most efficient way to get to this, the most efficient way to get to that. So you might think that, okay, it's so stressful. Should I buy this ship? Should I buy that ship? Do I really want to spend money on internet spaceships? Blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of us who are kind of going through a reverse stress where we're buying ships and we're sitting there and going like, is this really going to be that good? And like, uh-oh, buyer's remorse. Should I spend my money on that? And so in a way, it's equal, I think, on either side of things, because you can buy a ship and then just be like, what happened to my ship? Vanguard. So yeah, that's something that's universally felt, but in different ways by the entire community, dude. Whether you've spent, like, what was it? There was one guy who spent like over $30,000 on internet spaceships, and then there's you who spent $45 on a game package, right? but everybody kind of goes through the same stress, unless they're just, you know, the people who just kind of go like, oh, well, this game is done in 2027. I don't care. I'm just happy to support the game. Now, excuse me, I gotta go stick my head in the sand. Bye-bye. You know, unless you're one of those people, then yeah, I think everyone kind of goes through the stress just like you do. Just in different ways, but stress all the same. All right, next comment / question. Eliana Sagelski, sorry if I mispronounced that. What good do any concept if they are to change so much from the original design? Yeah, preaching to the choir. Yeah, that's kind of a constant irritant with the community, and oftentimes I find that when they're making design changes to ships, like, oh well, we couldn't get the landing gear to quite work the way we wanted to on the Buccaneer, so we moved the gun to the top. But then again, we got rid of all these other little features along the way because no big deal. But we went to all this effort of redesigning the landing gear and doing all this stuff to, in the end, make a worthless change to the ship. You know, that's, I don't know. I guess, you know, we could dive into that again, but I think I'd just kind of be beating a dead horse. But yeah, that's one of the things that does irritate me, is when concepts start to deviate from what was originally promised. I mean, the very first iteration of the Xeon Scout had 6 guns and 2 seats. And then it had 4 guns and 2 seats. And then it had 2 guns and 1 seat. But don't worry, like, it's fine, it's fine. No plans to revisit the Xeon Scout anytime soon. All right, next one, Kolok. Sounds almost Klingon. Kolok. Jake Ross gave an interesting answer when he was asked what his favorite ship is on Citizens of the Stars. He said that it used to be the Herald, but that it is now a ship that hasn't been announced yet. So he's sorry to keep us in the dark, and then winks. Yeah, once again, like this whole, like, we're not gonna tell you, right? Yeah, that pisses me off too. I would much rather know. I'm not saying, like, give me, like, full production schedules with your day-to-day goals, but just tell us these things. Like, these little games, like, oh, Origin Eclipse, never heard of that ship. Origin 600, never heard of that ship. Or, sorry, Aegis Eclipse, Origin 600, never heard of that ship. Ha ha ha. You know, it's, why? Just tell us. You know, you know, there's a point where you're, like, trying to say, okay, I'm trying to manage people's expectations, so I'm saying this is what I'm going for, but no firm details yet. Like when they were talking about the Cutlass, and they said, you know, until, like Matt Sherman was saying, until we really get the Cutlass fully built out, we don't want to comment on weapons and, you know, shields and things like that until we have it all fully built out, and then we're going to come to you guys with some stats after the fact, after we get all that done. I understand that, and so I can understand why not telling people something in that situation is completely valid. I understand. You know, if you guys ever need help figuring things out, you know, I can consult. But yeah, when they tell you, like, maybe it's a concept ship, maybe it isn't. What is it gonna do? Not gonna tell you. That's just bullshit. And I wish they would cut that shit out. There's nothing I find more irritating than that. It's like, well, I guess we'll see. Oh, I told them what the concept ship is going to be. I guess they know the end of Squadron 42 now. Uh-oh. I don't get that. All right. Whimsical Pacifist. Sorry, Tony Garcia. Why don't they do what Drake Uncharted did with make an animation to remove the gun and place it next to you? I guess sort of like slot it in next to the seat. I think that they would probably, they would love to do that, but the problem is they got all these like MFDs or multifunction displays and all these buttons throughout the cockpit that at some point we might implement, or MFDs that at some point we might actually make legible just saying, you know, you're going to move everything to MFDs. Maybe make it so you can read them would be great. But yeah, I mean, just pull some of that bullshit out and just make it so you can sit your gun next to you. I don't know why they don't do that. It's just like, oh no, because we want to have all these buttons so you can get into your ship and be like, beep, 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 beep. What? No. Just, yeah. So I totally agree with you, 100%. Whimsical pacifist now. No toilet, no external fuel tanks on missile pylons, no size 4 weapons on the Cutlass. They really don't like Drake. Oh, you also forgot no ejection seats as well. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I'm still kind of hopeful with the Cutlass to see what it turns into, but yeah, that was kind of sucky. All right, we're in the home stretch here. Bort Henderson. So if the Gladius has paper thin armor, does the Buccaneer have air for armor? No, the Buccaneer is actually armored by hopes and dreams and whimsy. Don't forget the whimsy. There's a lot of whimsy in the Buccaneer. Jesse James, you're my boy. Always come to you first. Thank you very much. Glass, smiley face. Smiley face right back at you. And what's the hug emoticon? I don't know. Or at least a handshake. So a hug might be a little too personal. Con Scott, magnetic plate or something that you can Velcro a rifle plus some clips or a pistol to. Problem solved. Exactly. You know, it's just like the solution. You just make a little like sliding panel and you just put the rifle in, slide it shut. Oh, but then we'd have to design this whole interaction animation and, you know, all this stuff. And it's like, and then, you know, someone would come in and say, yes, okay, you've implemented Velcro into the game, but is it a watershed moment in internet, you know, e-Velcro? How can we make this groundbreaking Velcro? And that's the problem. Like, oh my God, we got to make an animation just for the thing, and then unzipping the Velcro and then aligning it so the guy doesn't clip through the ship. Just make it so he reaches out and just yanks the fucking gun out of there. Like, not everything has to be a groundbreaking watershed moment in game design. You could just go like, yoink, gun, let's go. Right? But it's, I don't know. I mean, really, like, there are times when I'm just sitting here and I was like, I could make this video 2 hours long and I could just go on a rant, but, you know, I don't think everyone's here for that. Though it certainly, I think it would be entertaining and it would get a lot of the demons out, so to speak. And finally, Jason Giles, great info. Thanks again. Well, thank you for watching. Yeah. Hopefully one day the Piracy show will actually be about piracy once piracy is implemented in the game, at which point I will just change the show to Minions Opinions or whatever, or maybe I should do that right away and just get off my ass and get that graphic done. But who knows? Anyways, once again, everybody, thank you all for watching and subscribing and all that. And I will see you again on Friday. Enjoy.
Quantum travel initiated.